And we're back with the link online. Well, here we are once again in the studio with you on this Friday, and of course the show is also going to be broadcast on Saturday and Sunday on our website. But for those joining us right now, hello. Which camera are we at? This one?
Hello.
This one.
Hello.
There was a flip.
And we have the regular team back with us once again. Linda Jardin.
Hello there.
On mic number 2, Levon Savants.
Hello there.
On mic number 3 and keyboards,
Hi, everybody.
Marie-Claude Simard. And on the big keyboard behind the glass is Chantal Saint-Sauveur waving. You can almost see her. If you look at the camera, you can sometimes see her that way. We've got a very interesting show as usual. And Lynn, what do you have for us?
Well, with shopping for Christmas just around the corner, I'll look at online shopping versus going to the store and which one is better for the environment.
All right, Levon.
And I'll tell you about Canadian sanctions against 17 Saudi officials and who is not on that naughty list.
And also we'll hear about the phenomenon of birth tourism, and that's where foreigners give birth in Canada so the child will have a Canadian passport. Those are some of the things coming up on this edition. Oh, we also have something special a little bit later on as well, coming up on this edition of The Link, as we often try to do. The Link Online. All right, we're going to start off this week with a story about birth tourism, sometimes called passport babies, and sort of related to that is anchor children, as they are called. Now, in Canada, as in the U.S. and several other countries, a child who happens to be born in the country gets automatic citizenship. A practice in recent years is for pregnant foreign women to fly into the country, spend a couple of months at a so-called birth hotel or with relatives or friends, and have a baby here before flying back with their now Canadian baby. The Canadian passport gives the child access to all kinds of social benefits. It also facilitates international travel later in life. The past government here in Canada looked at changing this practice, but deemed it too expensive to change for the tiny numbers involved. Now, a former senior official at Citizenship and Immigration Canada has discovered more accurate figures that show that birth tourism is at least 5 times greater than thought. And rather than a few hundred per year, it's actually a few thousand and increasing. And in this excerpt of our conversation, I asked Andrew Griffith what led to this research.
Triggered me to do this latest article is I was always frustrated by the quality and the reliability of the data that was being used. And then I noticed that the Statistics Canada data, the national number said about 300 non-resident mothers giving birth in Canada, and yet we had data from the one hospital in Richmond that was saying it was like 400 or so. And so clearly the data was incorrect, and so I was looking for other forms of data, and I always thought that maybe we could get some useful data out of the hospital financial data as they code any patient treatment. If they're paid by Medicare, it's coded one way, but if they're non-residents, it's coded another way. So I wanted to look at that data to see if there was a difference, and sure enough, it showed that basically the hospital data suggested that the number of births born to non-residents was about 5 times what was previously understood.
How is it that that data is so much different from Statistics Canada data?
Well, when you register the birth of a child, the forms ask for an address. And that address is used for, the coding purposes and everything like that. But it doesn't specify on the forms that I looked at, and I looked at the major provinces, whether permanent address versus temporary address. So my assumption was that a lot of women who came to give birth in Canada, they were staying at a birth hotel, as they're called, or staying with a family or friend, and they just listed the Canadian address. So it didn't capture accurately the number of women who were coming here to give birth and who really only were in Canada for a relatively short period of time.
A previous story on this subject indicated that a certain number of these birth mothers who are here for birth tourism didn't pay.
I wasn't able to get the percentage of women who skipped out of the country and didn't pay their bills, so I don't know how many, but there are some cases that have been documented where, of course, the woman in particular had complications, or the baby had complications, and so they ran up very significant hospital bills that were not paid. And I think there's one lawsuit in BC regarding that case that there's an unpaid bill for about $250,000 or so.
So presumably, if you add up the various costs and potential costs, would this not incite the government to maybe look at this again and say, wait a minute, it would in fact be worth it to change our...
Well, I think the government is actually taking it more seriously than before. The minister has announced that the department will study it. It's still unclear in the end whether the revised numbers will make the government make the assessment that there's a need to fully change the citizenship law to address this practice.
In your search, Mr. Griffith, was this a growing issue in Canada over the past several years?
When I asked for the data, I asked for a time series, and I got 8 years time series, and sure enough, it did show a fairly steady increase over the 8-year period. So yes, it is increasing. And the other thing that was interesting is when I was doing the research, that told me that both overall the numbers were increasing and that it was happening in more localities in Canada.
And that was Andrew Griffith. He is an author and former senior official with Citizenship and Immigration Canada, and the full interview is on the website. Well, earlier this week, Canada announced targeted sanctions against 17 Saudi nationals. They are suspected of being directly involved or complicit in the murder of dissident Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi. And he was lured into a trap and killed at the Saudi consulate in Istanbul on October 2nd. And Levan, one man is missing from this list that Canadians have targeted, I guess, or pointed out anyway.
That's right, Mark. When I looked at the list released by Canadian officials on Thursday, there was one very, very glaring omission. Most of the people on the list are Saudi intelligence or security officials directly linked to the Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, or MBS, as he's also known. Now, reportedly, the CIA and Turkish officials who've been investigating this concluded that it was MBS, the Crown Prince, who has directly ordered the murder of Jamal Khashoggi. So when Foreign Affairs Minister Chrystia Freeland made her announcement in Buenos Aires, where she's attending the G20 summit, Canadian journalists wanted to know why he is not on that list. And this is what Minister Freeland had to say.
We are clear that the 17 people who we have sanctioned, we have looked very closely into their involvement in this terrible murder, and it is the clear opinion of our government that they were either directly involved in or complicit in the murder. That is why we feel confident imposing these sanctions on them, which is a very serious measure. We are also clear that this case is not closed as far as Canada is concerned. We are clear that a credible and transparent investigation has not yet happened, and it needs to happen. So the work continues, but this is an important step. And I do want to emphasize, as I think is well known by Canadians, that our government has been directly in touch with Turkey. The director of CSIS has been to Turkey, and information has been directly shared with us.
So do you think he's involved?
We believe that in naming people and in saying, in the view of the Government of Canada, that someone is responsible for something so serious and so odious, it's very important to gather all the facts. It's very important to act and to speak only on the basis of real certainty. these are not steps that we take lightly. They are not accusations that we can make lightly. But again, I do want to emphasize this case is not closed as far as Canada is concerned, both in terms of our continued work to determine for ourselves the facts, in terms of our work with our allies to seek a coordinated response, in terms of our work to seek an investigation which is credible and transparent for the sake of the world, and in terms of our review of our own arms exports to Saudi Arabia.
Yes, that was an excerpt of a press conference by Canadian Foreign Affairs Minister Chrystia Freeland. She was talking in Buenos Aires, Argentina on Thursday, and you heard her right. Canada is also reviewing our arms sales to Saudi Arabia.
Now, you listen to this, and we missed the question that was asked initially. But I'm just wondering, was the first question, is MBS involved? Because they've sanctioned 17 people. What was the first question that she responded to?
No, there were a number of questions before she got to Katie Simpson, our colleague from CBC, who asked this question. So, and then there was another reporter from CTV who kind of later on in the press conference also asked the question, but it was she was responding to a question from Katie
But
Simpson.
the question was something to do with MBS, which she did not answer.
Yeah, well, the question was why MBS is not on this list, and you could hear her walking on eggshells as she tries to,
try to avoid answering the question.
Yes.
She's always very measured like that. She really takes her time and thinks about what she's going to say, because it is a very sensitive issue.
It is very sensitive, and it's a very awkward issue because, of course, MBS is also there in Buenos Aires. And, on Friday, we saw this large group photo of all these G20 leaders who had gathered in Buenos Aires, and you can see MBS standing in one corner and Turkish President Erdogan standing in the complete opposite order, and Vladimir Putin somewhere closer to MBS, and Trudeau closer to Trump, who was in the center. So it's
Trudeau was right behind, so he was like center frame of the picture, right behind, because President Trump was front and center.
Yes.
And Mr. Trudeau installed himself directly behind to be sure that he's in all the photos. I suppose that's how that works.
Well, I would be very curious to listen to the conversations of these poor people who had to arrange the order, the negotiations. Who's going to stand next to MBS, and who wants to be seen next to him? And I'm guessing the Russians and the Chinese don't have much of a problem standing next to him. But for Western leaders, this would have been a very, very awkward meeting.
And still, though, the Chrystia Freeland did not directly answer the question. She walked a long way around it. But because the CIA and the Turkish officials have said that MBS was the one who ordered the killing, right?
Yes, and what she said, you heard on the tape, that Canada had dispatched the head of CSIS, which is our domestic spy agency, to Turkey. So I'm sure the Canadian government is taking this information very seriously, and it kind of leads you to question, because I'm sure Turkish officials have shared the same information with CSIS that have shared with the CIA, and CIA comes to this conclusion that Khashoggi was probably most likely murdered on the orders of the MBS, although they were not allowed to voice this conclusion publicly. And CSIS so far hasn't made any, definite pronouncements on this.
Well, the other thing is, okay, Canada has issued sanctions. What does that mean? They can't come to Canada, right?
They can't,
If they have any assets in Canada, those assets will be frozen. I mean, if this were the case with, of course, MBS, the Crown Prince is very likely has big assets in Canada, because there's several high-profile Saudi investments in Canada, especially in real estate and
other business ventures.
Other business ventures as well. So there you could have some probability that people actually, have assets and, it could hurt them. But I'd be really surprised that some kind of a low-ranking security official or a bodyguard would have significant assets in Canada.
So it's
even a Saudi one.
So it's kind of, if we can say this, kind of symbolic in a way. In a way.
It sends, yes, it is symbolic, but it also, you have to give credit to the Canadian government on this, is that they're at least trying to send some kind of a credit. Now, the big question is, will they cancel off any of the big arms deals? Because Saudi Arabia, according to Global Affairs Canada, in 2017, Saudi Arabia was the largest export market for Canadian arms sales outside of the United States. Mm-hmm. We sold almost 500 million worth of weapons to Saudi Arabia in 2017.
And that's not only these armored carriers. These are rifles and things.
Yeah, the big ones that people talk about is, of course, these big light armored vehicles, a huge contract, probably worth about $15 billion for something close to 750 vehicles. But there are also other armored small APCs that Canada sells to Saudi Arabia. There's sniper rifles. There's equipment for the Air Force and the Navy. These are not all kinetic weapons, but they do enable the Saudi military to conduct the war in Yemen, for example.
Well, if you have any thoughts on this and you're listening to us and would like to share those thoughts, drop us a line and we'll be glad to get your opinion on it. Still more to come. Well, what a big weekend we have had. It was Black Friday, the sort of American thing that spilled over into Canada, the big sales on all kinds of goods across Canada in stores. And then Cyber Monday just passed. Now, that is the day when there's supposed to be big sales for all those who shop online on the Internet. And that got people talking about, well, what causes more greenhouse gas emissions, shopping online or getting in your car maybe and going to the shopping center yourself? So, Lynn, you looked into this.
Well, Mark, I didn't know actually that Canadians are huge online shoppers, and for international online shopping, apparently we're the biggest in the world. It made me curious, and to find out more about the impact of online shopping on the environment, I spoke with Anika Kozlowski. She's an assistant professor of fashion design, ethics, and sustainability at Ryerson University in Toronto.
The more that we ship products, especially choosing the express shipping options, actually the greater the emissions and obviously the more impact that has on the carbon footprint of particular products.
Well, how does that compare to consumers actually going to a bricks and mortar store?
So brick and mortar stores, generally they have the time to build an optimization into that process. So when they're ordering something, they're doing bulk orders. Everything is coming over usually by boat or by freight. So everything is packed as well as it could possibly be into shipping containers. It's going on the ground. So very, very minimal impact and also very economical in comparison to when consumers and we buy something online. We may not be bundling our orders. We're ordering it quite quickly. So then what happens is, say, for example, using a next day shipping option or same day shipping option, because everything has to move so fast, there's not as much time in ensuring that packaging is optimized, that the truck is as full as it could be, or even that we're picking the best route. So when stuff has to go out very quickly, they just kind of pick the fastest routes as opposed to the best route.
But isn't there a carbon impact with all the individuals going to the stores?
There is, but because it depends, again, how far you're going. But if we live in an urban center and you're not traveling that far, then the impact is considerably less than, say, for example, choosing the shipping option, which, again, if you're picking the fast shipping or even ordering something that is then coming by air versus ground, it's going to be greater. The worst thing that we can actually really do is drive to a store, check out a product, and then order it online and do the fast shipping and returning. So Really what we want to do is just minimize the amount that products are traveling. So if we can keep that sort of in the back of our minds, that's really the best way to go about it.
What could retailers do to curb emissions produced by this online shopping?
Packaging is one thing, so using very lightweight packaging, recycled packaging, giving customers maybe even the option to pick up stuff in postal outlets that are close to them, or even picking up in store. What happens a lot of the times is during delivery is happening during working hours. We're not at home to receive the packages that we order, so multiple deliveries are made, which every time that's adding to the emissions and carbon footprint of a product. So giving customers the option to pick it up at a location and time that is convenient for them is very, very helpful. Educating the customer about picking a slower option, offering them the ability to bundle multiple products together and choose that slower option. Research shows that when it comes to environmental issues in our consumption behaviors, when consumers are aware of a problem, they are more likely to obviously pick the better choice. They don't want to be harmful, but awareness and having the right information is what is key there.
So, do you have a tag?
Well,
it's me.
It's you.
We're so busy. Well, we'll tell you why in a second, okay? So, shoppers may not think their individual actions make a difference, but Professor Kozlowski says that if you put them all together, they can have a huge impact on carbon emissions and, of course, right around the world.
Well, she said something that's really true there is when you shop online and the delivery truck comes, there's no, they don't tell you when they're going to come or even give you a relative time frame, and they'll come during the day, as
while
she
you're
said,
at work.
while you're at work, and you're not there, so they don't deliver the package, and so they have to come back, which again is more gas. I mean, this has happened to me as well. You know, you're waiting for a package, and you get a note saying we were here, but you weren't, kind of thing. Well, why don't you let me know or something? You know, we can arrange some kind of a deal. You know, deliver it to a neighbor or something like that. Anyway, you know. So, that's a bit of a drawback to online sales.
So there's all those multiple deliveries made by the company, and then there's the gas you burn when you eventually have to go and pick the item up.
Yeah.
So
because often those centers, especially in big cities, often the centers are some distance away.
Yeah.
You have to drive through city traffic and everything to get them. So then you're burning a lot of gas and time there, too.
Yeah.
I would also imagine, since you're talking about, international purchases, like a lot of these sites are in China, it would probably also involve not only just like local or regional shipping, it would probably also involve like transatlantic, trans-Pacific shipping as well.
Well, that's one of the things she was saying. If you get a rush order, then of course it has to go by plane, and it's not going over land or by sea. And so she's saying, the best alternative is to buy more local and go and pick it up somewhere, either in a store, if it's delivered to a store, or if it's delivered to a post office box. And she says everybody should be moving towards that, but it's not going that way, right? It's going drones, dropping things off at your house within 2 hours. So, I mean, it's really an uphill battle.
Yeah, I've yet to see a drone service that is on.
Don't get me started on drones. When I see a drone, I want to pick up a rock and throw it.
Slingshots might work. Mm-hmm. They make a lot of noise, those things.
That's another story for another day.
Could you imagine if they start to get popular?
They are popular in some places.
Well, I mean, as delivery vehicles, not as generally speaking toys. They're generally toys now. Yeah. But I mean, as delivery things, driving around like giant bumblebees or something, making a heck of a racket.
I have a guy, I walk by a park every day on my way to work, and on good, sunny days, there's a guy who's training, I guess he's some kind of an amateur. The problem is, where I live, that's the landing line for the Trudeau International
Airport.
Approach.
Yeah,
the approach. So I always pass by and I'm thinking, oh, boy, if this drone flies a bit higher, it's going to be right in the way of this
the
airplanes,
jets.
Coming down for,
Well, the laws say that you just can't fly within I don't know whether it's 5 kilometers of a landing area or an airport or something, or 9 kilometers or something. So,
well, we're certainly within 9 kilometers, so it's.
So
The planes are pretty low by the time they reach us.
yeah, that person is doing this probably
Illegal?
not within the law.
Okay.
Well, now we have a kind of a special thing. One of a couple of special things. The smiling Marie-Claude is telling us.
That's what
I have a
distracted
surprise
me,
for you
was
guys.
the app.
We're going to have fun in a few minutes, but first, yes, I'm going to
Fun
tell
with
you.
the internet. Oh, boy.
yes, I just want to tell you that we launched officially this week, Radio-Canada International, RCI. We launched our app. So now people can download on their phone, on their smartphone, our app, and you can access very directly, very fast to our wonderful content. Let me just, if you can see, if you have an Android phone, for example, you can go on Google Play and you make a search for our app. You look, put Radio-Canada International in the search engine.
Not
And then
RCI.
look at that. You can have it either in French, English, Espanol, Arabic, or Chinese. And once you're on the app, you can also access those other languages. So it's pretty cool. It's really fun. And I thought because it's so fun and cool, well, we could celebrate, right?
Okay, yeah, we're all down for
I
celebrating.
actually just downloaded the app while we were listening to that interview. I went on. I have an Apple phone, so I went on to Apple App Store, and it took me literally 30 seconds to download the app, and
Well-
now I can see all our stories here.
All right, so we had a story about Christmas shopping, and we're going to be involved right now in a very Christmas tradition. And so I thought, in order to sort of put us in the mood, that I would,
Yeah, maybe that's why we lost our Facebook connection there, because you shorted out the electrical outlets.
So I'm going to serve eggnog. Eggnog is here, a nice beverage. Mark, maybe you can describe what eggnog is.
Well,
I don't suggest you read the
in the
instructions.
eggnog, we're going to put some
the
white rum,
contents.
Oh, I
because
thought
that's
you-
the tradition.
Isn't
What?
it illegal for us to be doing this?
No, it's pure information. It's for the sake of
okay.
information.
it's
Where
absolutely legal. What the heck are you doing?
Did you shake it? Don't shake it without the cover
Shake
on.
it. Why do you shake the eggnog?
Well, because it might not be uniform.
it got shaken.
I'm
Listen.
very suspicious of stuff
wait a
that
minute.
comes out of a container, because I used to actually make eggnog at
Here
home.
we go. We
Well,
have
see-
a party
Well, there you go.
atmosphere.
Because this is commercial stuff, and it doesn't have, because eggnog is supposed to have a little drop of vanilla
So,
in it or something, and some
Half a
maybe.
glass of rum?
Cream and egg, not for me, thank you.
Oh, come on.
I still have work to do. I will fall asleep at my desk.
All right, we're gonna give a little
I
nog.
rely on you guys to
little nog
give me
to live on.
a.
All right,
give
thank
me
you
a
very
test.
much. I have
There's like
a lot of work to
rum
do,
here.
but
That's for you, Mark.
A little nog for me, I guess. You're not
And
having.
Bob.
a-
Sniff it. Can I
Chantal
sniff
is
it?
going to have some.
Chantal is going to have some. Chantal is shaking it. Oh, this will make it. It'll make you so much happy. So the thing is about eggnog is it dates back a long, long way.
I'll taste the eggnog without the rum in it. Just a little drop, just
Oh,
to
that's
taste
good.
what the flavor's like.
So apparently it goes back. The nog part anyway comes from
Oh.
the fact that they used to put it in little things called noggins.
really,
Little wooden bowls were called noggins.
not
So
bad.
that has something to do with it, I guess.
Oh.
Yeah,
So it has nothing to do with the fact
it has nothing to do with the fact that it messes up your noggin and you're unable to do it, to
Because-
use your noggin to do anything worthwhile for the next few hours.
So there we have it. It's certainly a Christmas tradition in the English part of the country. Not so much in Quebec, though, is it,
We
Marie-Claude?
call it lait de poule.
Lait de poule, yeah.
hen's milk, which is a bit strange.
Yeah.
But well, yeah, it is, but maybe not as strong as you say.
Not as much as
Yeah.
in, shall we say, English Canada, perhaps.
Yeah.
The other places, some people do hot mulled wine. You can get wine and just put herbs, spices in it, different spices like nutmeg and cloves and stuff
Well, that's
like that.
that's sort of where this evolved from, because apparently that idea of a sort of a mulled wine goes back in hundreds of years in Britain, and apparently only the rich people could afford things like milk and eggs, which comes out
Ah.
there. So this was kind of a rich drink originally.
really.
Yeah, originally. Now we can have it now.
Your lights just went from green to red.
I
Look
know.
at that. They're changing again.
These are sophisticated lights.
They change, but very slowly,
Yes, well,
Who knew?
very gradually.
these are very sophisticated lights.
Yeah.
Well, listen, on that Christmassy note, we should sing, Happy Christmas to us.
Oh, no, don't please.
It's a bit too early,
I was
especially for
thinking
me.
that maybe we should have eggnog until the holidays.
Well, we
like
could-
until the 24th.
Do you think it's going to last that long with these guys?
We can try.
Yeah, we can sample all the various brands.
So anyway, we have now sort of initiated the Christmas season because by the time this show airs on Sunday, it will be Christmas. I mean, it'll
December.
be December. So for Lynn and for Chantal and Lavon and Mary Claude, I'm Mark Montgomery. Thanks for listening to us. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Ciao.
Ciao. Cheers.